This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org here at Acapulco in, of course, Acapulco, Mexico. Today we are joined by scholar, philosopher, OG, liberty, movement, freedom advocate, G Edward Griffin, a real legend in the field. And Edward, I wanted to talk to you about some of the issues that are coming up that are very important, because I think you could actually provide some really important perspective on a lot of the turbulent stuff that has been happening inside of the United States. Right now, America has faced very horrible events that unfolded inside of Florida with another recent school shooting. And I wanted to ask you, and I wanted to talk about gun control, mental health screenings, and their effects on the liberty movement. And do you see it as a kind of poor way of increasing security?
Well, taking it from the tail end first, it's the worst way to increase security, because all of these things that you're talking about point in one direction, and that is that, oh, we're scared to death, we got these problems, there's crisis underway, so what's the solution? The solution is always more government. Say, that's what it's all about, in my view. Well, is more government the answer for more security, or is it the answer for less security? And in my view, the greatest threat that mankind faces in the world today comes from governments and not from criminals or terrorists and so forth. So that's sort of the indirect way of answering your question. I think it's the worst possible way of achieving security.
And you know, the talks are very important and permanent right now in the United States, with a lot of people calling for either more gun control or mandatory mental health screenings. How do you see these things unfolding, with so many of these tragic events unfolding and being highlighted by the media, and being really increased in such a level where it's hard to ignore, where the general public is pushing for these issues?
Well, the general public is not really pushing for these issues. That's the first thing we have to understand. It sometimes appears to be that way because it's always on the news, and every time a politician speaks, they're saying, oh, we got this problem and we need more government and so forth. So everybody's talking about it, but that doesn't mean that the general public is for it, because I believe firmly that that's just the opposite. But they create the illusion. They create the appearance of popular demand. Now, what can you say about that? Is there a motive there or not? I think you'd have to be a fool not to see that there is a motive. These people who are advocating these solutions, they got the solution ready before the problem arises. I mean, they've already got the script written. They're just looking for some issue. And I believe that sometimes they encourage the issue just for that reason, because they know that the more people are afraid and in a crisis situation, the more mindless they become. They say, oh, please help us, protect us, and so forth. So that's what's going on. I think the solution is, first of all, we have to understand that these people who are speaking out so solemnly about, well, we've got to do this to protect you, they really don't care at all about protecting you. They're just using this crisis as you'd never let a good crisis go to a waste, they say. Well, that's what they're doing. They're picking crises and they're not letting it go to a waste. Now, you mentioned mental health screening and so forth. If you take a look at these shootings, which is how we started this whole conversation, the press is not covering the fact. Every time I've had a chance to dig into the background of these shooters, guess what? They're on drugs. They're on prescribed drugs for anxiety, or they're psychotropic drugs. These kids are drugged out of their brains, and if you look at the package inserts for these drugs and read the side effects, every one of them has the side effect of suicidal and homicidal instincts. Mm-hmm. And yet nobody ever focuses on that. Yep. They're drugging these kids, and then they radicalize them. They look for the most sensitive ones that have a little bit wacko maybe on some views, and they bring them in, they encourage them, they give them the weapons, and then they have the shootout, and their parents are stunned by it, and really so. Yeah. They say, that's not my boy. And it's not their boy. It's a robot that's been created by programming and drugging.
Yep. And the pharmaceutical industrial complex does a lot of advertising within media, so of course it's going to be very difficult for media companies to bite the hand that feeds them. And of course they mess around with the kind of chemicals in your brain and imbalances that are really very unpredictable. So I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed, but sadly won't be by the mainstream media, but will by alternative media. Changing topics, you've been around for a very long time, and I wanted to ask you about these kind of recent turbulent times within the U.S. stock market. Personally, I always seen that there's always a 7-year cycle where the economy goes up and then it goes down. It happened in 2008, it happened in 2001, but it hasn't happened when it was supposed to just a few years ago. And many people are saying that these latest economic turbulent moves in the stock market are a bigger show towards a probable collapse or a bigger economic hit than we have seen in our lifetimes. What do you see as the current economic situation, and how do you see it unfolding? Because there does need to be a correction, especially in the U.S. market.
Well, that's kind of a two-folded question, I think. First of all, when we're looking at the trends in the market, the cycles up and down, it's the short ones, the 7 years and the 21 years cycles and the 50 and so forth, there have all kinds of cycles. We're talking about a world that belongs to a group of people that they call themselves the Chartists. And I really believe that there is a lot to be recognized from past patterns because they reflect certain ebbs and flows in the economy and I don't know, maybe sunspots, I don't know, all that effective. But they're there, those cycles are really there. But most, I believe, now this is the second part of it. Before I leave the first part, I don't really know what the cycles mean. I just know that in general, they're there. I don't know that they're reliable, but looking backward, they're pretty reliable. Are they reliable going forward? Now that takes to the second part of this thing. That if the cycles are reliable, they've got to be based on the free flow, ebb and flow of human interaction, psychology in the markets and so forth. Every person, every little increment in this mass of society that's in the stock market are making their own little evaluations, they're countering each other, and it produces a kind of a master average out of all the intelligences and perceptions and instincts of all the people who are free to interact and buy and sell. That's how it works. And so you can see where cycles would be fairly reliable. But now, the key word here is if they're free to buy and sell. I believe, and it's clearly obvious, I think, that the free market, especially in the stock market, is history. It's completely controlled now by the Federal Reserve and some of the people in the Treasury. The elitists have locked down the stock market, and they're using it as a propaganda weapon. They're making sure, in methods which we don't need to go into, but they involve funneling money into the players, the big players, the buyers of the stocks, the funds and so forth. They go to these people and, so I'm told, and it makes sense, they say, look, we want you to prop up the market. You buy. Now, don't worry, we'll protect you if you lose. If it's a losing bet, which it probably will be, we'll see that you recover it through the Federal Reserve with some special deal, lower interest rates or something under the table. So they have all these people, the big players in the market, buying and selling simply to produce an effect in the market. It has nothing to do with profit or gain or the balance on the ledger. It has to do with political manipulation of awareness so that the newscaster can come on and say, well, the stock market is up today, the economy is good. So don't be critical of your politicians, that's the hidden message. The economy is good, what are you complaining about? Because the stock market is up. Now we come to the stock market dropping all of a sudden. And I found it kind of curious when the stock market dropped just a few days after President Trump got a lot of kudos for bragging about how good the economy was. Just a few days later. I mean, here was this big announcement that Trump made, the State of the Union address, and he was saying, look, the economy is so good, everybody's happy, everybody's making more money, and a few days later the stock market crashed. Well, since we know that the market is totally in the hands of the deep state, let's call it what it is, do you suppose there might be something there to discredit Trump and his administration? It's a possibility that I don't think people should ignore.
I don't think people should ignore it. I think the Goldman Sachs people in his administration, I think they're up to no good. I don't know why he surrounded himself with all those people when they're crooks. And to me, I think you put it very well. The whole system, the whole economic system, it's a big racket. It's a big club. And the majority of us are not in it. Okay, we're at Anarchapulco. We want to see a speaker speak really quickly. So one last question I wanted to ask you about your future projects, Red Pill Expo. We were talking about it a little bit. I'm very much interested in doing a panel on there and doing a little workshop on Change Media University. How can people get involved? What can people expect? And what are you up to?
Okay, it's hard to keep this one short, but the Red Pill Expo and the Red Pill University are based on that rather famous sci-fi movie, The Matrix. And the idea is very simple. Take the red pill. break through the illusion, see life the way it really is. Well, that's sort of a good way of describing a lot of the things that we're talking about. So we adopted that allegory for the Red Pill Expo last year. It was an amazing success. People came from all over the world to it, and we decided we had to do that now every year. And that's coming up. It's coming up in June 21 through 23. I'll see that you get the details regarding the ticket enrollment and all of that, but it's going to be one heck of an event. The people that came last year, they left there, they screamed and they said, we want more, and so more is coming, and we're going to have more red pills there than you can possibly imagine.
I love it when the man's there, the people are there, and that's why we're able to survive as an independent media organization. G Edward Griffin, I have a tremendous amounts of respect for you. Thank you again so much for your time. I'll see you, and everyone else out there at the Red Pill Expo. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching.